Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette,
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette.
Welcome to Valhalla, Movie Oubliette, episode 153, the Continental Connecting podcast with me, Dan, really getting into houseplants in Melbourne, Australia.
And me, Conrad, constantly taking my car back to the garage in Cambridge, UK.
Oh, no. In this podcast, we discuss forgotten genre films, horror, sci-fi, and fantasy because adventures involving sunken islands, pre-teen Norse gods, and blowing a big-ass horn are what we're all about.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Definitely.
Conrad, your car. I thought you've got an electric car, right?
I have, yeah. So basically the only thing that can go wrong with it is the wheels. So apparently I drove through a pothole and dented two of my wheels.
The wheels?
Yes. The actual wheels.
Is that possible?
Yeah. That's possible, Dan, because the state of our roads in the UK are terrible because our government sucks.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, and what was more fun is that the garage managed to, they did replace two wheels.
Yes.
But the wrong two wheels.
Oh, what?
So then I had to go back again for them to replace the correct two wheels.
Oh, my God.
And then they had the gall to say to me afterwards, we're not going to charge you for the other ones. And I thought, no, you're not.
No, of course not.
Yes, that's my life.
Oh, no.
Yours sounds much more fun with plants.
Well, it's another never-ending abyss of money that I'm throwing into. But, it's houseplants. I'm trying to decipher the secrets of how to keep plants alive in my home. But, it's an ongoing journey.
Yeah, I kill everything. All my plants are plastic.
Oh, right. Yeah, I haven't chosen the right season either because it's winter down here and it's freezing. So nothing's really alive anyway.
Right, really? See, I heard from another friend in Australia that they were having a bit of a heat wave, but I think that was Sydney.
Sydney's having a heat wave. No, it's down to like 0 degrees at night sometimes in Melbourne, which is cold. This is what we consider very, very cold. Everyone's complaining about it. It's the talk of headline news. All right. Well, anything in the mailbag today, Conrad?
Yes, indeed. We heard from previous guest and director Chris McKay, who said, yes, so glad you're doing Dog Soldiers.
Nice.
Must be a personal favourite of his.
Yeah.
But it was great to hear from him again. Lisa MD23 said, as suggested, I also checked out Wild Country. Sure. It was actually a great premise and parts of it were excellent, but it was mainly like a Halloween episode of Biker Grove, only Scottish instead of Geordie.
Oh, right. I don't know Biker Grove.
You don't know Biker Grove, the source of Ant and Dec, two of the UK's greatest celebrities?
No.
Okay, that's a whole genre of TV you're missing out on. Oddly enough, they visit Australia every year to host their show, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, where they put celebrities into the Australian outback to eat bush tucker fare like sheep's testicles. I don't understand.
I found that really strange when I found out that the UK Celebrity Get Me Out of Here is in Australia. Like, there's a show in Australia that Australians aren't seeing. It's quite weird.
Yes. On the Black Hole, we also heard from Wicked Person, who said, as a kid, I remember being very creeped out by the idea of being turned into zombie androids and wondering if zombie androids needed to poop.
I think they would, right? I mean, that's why the plant room was kept going, to feed them.
Yeah, they must be fed, mustn't they?
Yeah.
Or maybe that's why that guy's limping.
Maybe.
He's really constipated.
Maybe.
And finally, we heard from Serge of Cold Crash Pictures. Hello, Serge.
Hello, Serge.
And he said, I grew up hearing The Black Hole was absolutely terrible, something Disney was profoundly ashamed of. But really, it's fine.
Yeah.
Its greatest sin is that it's not quite as good as any of its influences or what it went on to influence. 2001, Star Wars, Event Horizon, etc. Yeah, it's very true. I still love it. I think it's great.
I think it still has a place in sci-fi history.
I think it does. Anyway, thanks everyone for getting in touch. We always love hearing from you.
Yes, we do.
Well, to introduce our film this time, we actually have a very, very special guest. We are joined today by a friend of the pod, a gentleman, a straight shooter, and the host of the best source of analysis of Gen X toys and media. It's Retro Blasting's Michael French. Hello, sir.
Hey, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back. And I always am I feel like one of those cartoon characters back in the day that would blush when you guys introduced me. It's like, oh, I feel like Flower from Bambi. Just like, it's so nice. It's such a welcoming podcast to be on. It's great to be here.
Well, it's good to have you here. What have you been working on recently? I watched and really enjoyed your latest video on Hong Kong action cinema. You were unpicking something very complicated there.
I didn't realize it was going to be that complicated. I thought I was making a video about, it was originally titled How to Survive a Recasting. I was very impressed by the way they had handled the transition from Michelle Yeoh to Cynthia Khan in the series without any problem.
Yeah, the Line of Duty series, they look like great movies. It's great they're on Blu-ray again.
Oh, yeah.
Or for the first time, maybe.
Yes, that for the first time, but such fun movies to watch. And I thought, that's what I'm going to make my video about. And then as I started to just do a basic Google search to make sure that my research was correct and I got all the names right and all that kind of stuff, I found myself going down a rabbit warren of titling crazy and versioning crazy. And I'm like, oh, never mind. The recasting is going to be like the subplot. The main plot is all the different titles of these movies. And it was a lot of fun to make that video.
It was fun to watch too, yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm working on a video next, Conrad, that might be near and dear to your heart. I'm working on a video about a very rare 1985 Transformers playset that a lot of people don't know about. Even Transformers fans don't know about it. I remembered it from childhood, seeing it on shelves. The short version is that Hasbro licensed out the Transformers name to another company, and that company made an officially licensed cardboard slot and tab playset fortress for the Transformers. And otherwise, the Transformers never really had a retail purchase playset. And it's huge. I put it together for the first time just the other day. I've had it for like 3 years and I keep forgetting to do the video. I think it's getting bigger every time I look in the room. I think it's actually, it's crazy. So I'll be working on that next this weekend.
Wow.
So
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, you are one of the few guests we have who is certified to enter the Oubliette and pick out a movie. Would you like to do it now?
I'm a little trepidatious, but yes, I will go get the movie. I will go get the movie.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. It's still through the same door, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I know that sometimes its location is ethereal and moves. It's like a TARDIS. All right. Here we go. God, it smells like bad casting down here. Like, this is awful. Do you know the walls down here are covered in fackle? There's like fackle all over. You know what fackle is, right?
Yeah.
Fackle. It's failure at the concept level, and it's all over these walls. All right, here I got the movie. I'm coming back. I'm out of here. The bad casting smell is just revolting. All right, here we go.
Whoa! First we're flying, now we're sinking.
All right, here's the movie. I've got the movie.
Oh, what have you got?
It's Erik the Viking, 1989.
Directed by Terry Jones.
Yes, directed by Terry Jones. Oh, God.
And who appears in this movie?
Tim Robbins, John Cleese, a lovely actress named Imogen, whose last name I can never remember.
Stubbs, I think.
Yes, thank you. Mickey Rooney, and of course Terry Jones in an extended cameo.
Yeah, of course. Give us a synopsis to set the scene.
Okay, so the synopsis to set this scene. Erik the Viking is a comedy about Erik the Viking, who wants to end Ragnarok. He wants to see the sun again. He wants to tell the gods to stop Ragnarok so the never-ending winter will end and everybody can move forward into broad sunlit uplands. I mean, I think that's just the best way to describe it. And so he convinces his village of Vikings, all the warriors, to set off on this expedition to find Valhalla and face the gods and get them to stop this dark time in the period of their history. And of course, hijinks ensue along the way. John Cleese happens. That's all I know. It's, that's the premise.
That sets us up nicely. Mm-hmm. So we'll take a brief break and then we'll come back to discuss. Mm-hmm. And we're back with Michael French of Retro Blasting to discuss Terry Jones's 1989 epic adventure, Erik the Viking. Dan, had you seen this movie before?
So, yeah, I did mention in our last episode that I think I watched this as a child, but I wasn't sure. And I did watch. It was familiar, but I only remember one scene for some strange reason. And it's a scene where they're on the island and to go to, is her name Aud? The princess of the island. Tim Robbins' character, Erik, climbs a tower with knives.
Yes.
And then she's like, why don't you just use the stairs? And it's just a stupid little gag. And that's the only thing I remember of the whole movie. And also the island sinking. That's the only thing I remember. Everything else, blanked.
Yeah.
But how about you, Conrad?
I remember watching it on video rental. I remember it was definitely rental because it was one of the big boxes. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, wow, this is, I think it was like a 12 or a 15. So I thought, wow, this is going to be edgier than previous Python adjacent movies.
Yeah.
And I had a complete blank. I did not remember anything about it when it was picked out of the Oubliette.
Yeah. I watched it when I was like 9, I think. And completely blanked it apart from that one scene.
Yeah, so we've all seen it but completely forgotten it.
It is a movie that is in itself an oubliette. Terry Jones has managed to make a movie that forgets itself. Look, I know that sounds brutal. I love Monty Python. I love Monty Python's Flying Circus. I love Life of Brian. I love Holy Grail. Melinda really loves Meaning of Life. Mm-hmm. And I love most of the troupe. I have always found Terry Jones, may he rest in peace. I don't hate him by any stretch of the imagination. I have always found him to be the weakest link in the Monty Python troupe. He's always playing the same character even when he's playing totally different characters. Right. He always plays the daughtery old mom, or he plays the very oh my male guy, who's just a caricature. Like you could literally replace him in most of his sketches and movies with Anthony Daniels and you wouldn't know that he was gone.
Right.
He's the same guy in every single sketch. So when I heard that it was a Monty Python adjacent movie, and then I heard it was directed by Terry, and I got my hopes up because I thought it was going to follow with Gillum. And then it said Jones, and I went, oh no, this is like if you paid for a Monty Python adjacent movie on Wish.com. And the whole movie is like a bottle rocket that doesn't go off. Like conceptually, there are no highs and lows with the comedy. The only person that's able to elevate the comedy in his scenes is John Cleese.
Yeah.
And I swear the only reason he's able to do it is because he's pretending he's in a totally different film.
Yeah.
There was this famous quote.
That's true.
Yeah, there was this famous quote. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio was interviewed a few months into the release of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. They asked her what it was like working with Alan Rickman. Mm-hmm. And she said, you know what? She said, it was wonderful working with him. The odd part was he was clearly performing a totally different film. And I wished that I was in that movie the entire time.
Right.
To me, that was how John Cleese rightfully comes off in this film. Like, he's in a totally different film. And I wished the whole time that I was watching that movie. But Terry Jones' whole concept for this falls flat. None of the scenes join up together properly. It's like an and then script that just won't end. It's like, and then they get to the island, and then he's sleeping with Imogen, and then they're back on the boat that was sinking before, but now it's repaired and we don't know why. Oh, and then John Cleese shows up, and then there's this impotent pirate fight on the boat where Terry Jones, you cannot direct action. May you rest in peace, and I don't want to besmirch your memory, but there's no excitement, there's no energy, there's no momentum, there's no dynamism. I will shut up now. I know I'm killing this episode.
No. I will say, I mean, we did watch Jabberwocky this year as well, and they are pretty much companion pieces. They're both from Monty Python, trying to do not Monty Python, although still doing Monty Python. I found Jabberwocky a little bit insufferable with just the silly humor. It was just like real crass humor all the way. Whereas this is, again, silly humor, but I do feel like there is a storyline and there is a sense of we have to go here to get the horn, to blow the thing, to go to Asgard. You know, there is a sense of we're going on a journey, we've got a quest. Whereas Jabberwocky was aimless.
Right.
He wasn't trying to do anything.
Right.
Dennis was just existing in this world and somehow saves the day. Whereas in Erik the Viking, there does seem to be a point to the movie. I did think Tim Robbins was very miscast. Were they just going for a famous American? Is that all they were going for?
I think they were. I bet you there was a note somewhere that said, hey, we'd like to try and get this into as many American theaters as possible. Can you get us an American lead? Somebody who's popular in the American market. And he was ascendant at that time. He was about to do The Player, if that's right. I can't remember. Yeah. But he was up and coming.
This is like the fourth movie of his that we've covered on the podcast, which I'm quite surprised by. So Howard the Duck, he was in 1986. And he's also in Zathura and City of Ember. But yeah, I guess up and coming, he had been in Top Gun previously, and then the following year, Jacob's Ladder comes out.
Right.
And then Shawshank Redemption, 94, obviously. Pinnacle. Yeah, a bit miscast. It gets better towards the middle of the film. But I felt like, why is Tim Robbins in this movie? It didn't. He didn't really gel with the sort of British Python-esque of the rest of the cast.
I dare anyone to watch this movie and then say again with a straight face that Kevin Costner is the worst example of not having an accent in a cast of accents. Right. Because this story is so focused and it's all about Vikings in the Dark Ages, basically. And everybody else comes off with some, except Mickey Rooney.
Well, yeah.
Fortunately, he's not in the movie that much. Tim Robbins is the title character, and he has to carry the whole movie. I wasn't sure watching it if it was just Tim Robbins being miscast or if it was Terry Jones not directing him properly, because he's a very talented actor.
Yeah,
Shawshank Redemption.
Yes.
Yeah, so like I feel like he could have pulled this off with the right direction, but when you see the fight scenes, you see the way, as you pointed out, Dan, there was a story here. There was a concept. There was a through line. And then Terry Jones just applied Jabberwocky scene construction to all of it. And you go, you've broken the momentum of the journey by the way you think about putting scenes together. I feel like Tim Robbins may have been a victim of Terry Jones' directorial style or lack thereof. Look, I try as best I can going into movies to give the actors the benefit of the doubt because they're being chosen to operate on a level that the director decides, and they have been in other projects where they have proven themselves. So like, for example, when we saw Natalie Portman's total non-performance in 3 Star Wars movies, but we've seen The Professional, she can act.
Yeah.
What happened here? And then we see George Lucas literally just sitting in a chair with a huge coffee behind the camera. We go, that's what happened to Natalie Portman's performance. It wasn't asked for.
Yeah.
It wasn't there. So I keep going with Terry Jones. I'm like, did he direct Tim Robbins at all?
Well, Freddie Jones, a lovely actor that we've bumped into before on the podcast, memorably in Krull as Inia, the old one, He has a lovely role in this as Harold, the Christian missionary, who spends the entire movie not being able to see any of the Viking mythology that's happening around him.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Because
yeah.
he's so in his own belief system, none of it exists for him, which turns out to be critical at the end of the movie. But he got jokingly annoyed at Terry Jones because Terry apparently was telling everybody to play it straight, to play it for verisimilitude.
Oh, right.
And then he comes on and behaves like Miss Piggy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Kermit.
His one performance every time.
Yeah. And Freddie said to him, hang on, you've been telling us all to hold back, and here you're camping it up all over the place.
Yeah, wow, yeah.
I kind of understand what they were going for with Tim Robbins, because although he's 6'5", which is completely against what Terry Jones was looking for originally, he wanted somebody who was diminutive, who would be surrounded by these massive, muscly Vikings.
Oh,
He
right.
wanted
Yeah.
like a Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon,
Yeah,
with
right.
all of these big burly guys, and then he gets a 6'5" American guy. He originally wanted to cast Tom Hulse, who had just made a big splash in Amadeus, but by the time they got funding 5 years later to actually make the movie, Tom had decided he wanted to focus on theatre work.
Right.
So then he went on this big shopping spree trying to find an American as a tent pole so that they could sell it in the States. Nick Cage came up as a possibility.
Oh my God.
So imagine that.
It would have definitely added flavor.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
It really would have done.
Cage might have actually been the one person to understand what Terry Jones was trying to pull off,
Quite possibly.
because he's that like out there.
Or he could have just phoned it in like Season of the Witch. Who knows?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so he ended up with Tim Robbins, and Tim wanted to take it because he loved the idea of an action movie that was advocating for the end of violence, because that's what the end of Ragnarok represents, the end of bloodshed and fighting, which of course leads to a bit of a critique on capitalism, because the people who are trying to stop him from doing it are the people who are big in the arms trade, which is
Right.
John Cleese's half Dan, and also the blacksmith, Kettle, and his assistant, Loki, who isn't the god Loki, he's just a guy called Loki.
Yeah.
He's a bit weaselly, played by Anthony Sher. So I think Tim Robbins was attracted to being in an action movie that was about ending violence, and also a film that he claims is strangely not misogynistic, which was big in the 80s in action movies. Although it does start off with a rape.
I apologize for forgetting to throw that into the premise. I can now understand why I forgot it, because I think everybody wants to forget a comedy sequence bit that is around that.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels very Python, though.
Yes.
It does, but it feels very abandoned halfway through season 4 Python.
Yeah, sure.
A Viking who cannot rape because he's actually a pacifist and doesn't like it. He'd rather have a relationship. I mean, it's a funny gag, but with all of these, I find the movie sluggishly slow, and all of the jokes painfully laboured, and they're not
Yeah.
funny. And an example is when the Vikings are setting off on their quest, they have this gag where all of the women, the mothers and the wives and the girlfriends, are all gathered on the dock, and everything that Erik is saying, like, well, I'm sure we won't be ripped apart by sea beasts, is upsetting them more and more, wailing and crying even louder the more he speaks, and he just keeps going and making it worse. It's like, well, A, that's not funny. And B, now it's going on for far. Oh, you're going to do it again.
too
Oh, it's
long.
been 3 minutes now. Move on. Which brings up the issue of the edit.
Right.
As far as I can tell, there are 3 major cuts of this movie and like a 1.5. So I think the theatrical cut was 107 minutes in the US when it was released. It was trimmed slightly to remove the rape to get a BBFC classification that wasn't an 18, because for some reason the British Board of Film Classification think that sexual violence against women isn't funny, which is an odd stance. They're a bit old-fashioned like that.
Everybody, I'm laughing at Conrad's sarcasm. I'm not laughing at the idea of a rape scene, okay?
No, we're not laughing at rape scenes. We're laughing at the idea that this would be a good idea for comedy. But anyway, Apparently, Terry Jones was never happy with the pacing of that cut. And so when it came to video, he cut it down to something like 89 minutes. And then several years later, when Arrow Video finally put it on Blu-ray or DVD, he wanted to edit it again. So he actually got his son to do it. So it's called the director's son's cut.
Yes.
And it's 75 minutes long. So the movie is over in an hour and a quarter.
Wow.
And yet it's not a good cut either, because the people who've seen it say that there's too much cut out of it now and it doesn't feel like a movie. It just feels like a test reel. Yeah.
Wow,
I mean,
okay.
I'm fascinated by the trap this movie has put itself in. If you don't cut enough of it, the pacing is horrible and it feels interminable, and you just want to put your head in an oven as the viewer. You cut too much of it and it doesn't work either. So you sit back and you go, maybe it's not failure at a concept level, but definitely failure at an execution level. If you can't cut it in any direction to solve the problem, maybe you can't fix it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest problem with it is the balance between serious fantasy and slapstick comedy. And it just doesn't quite get the balance right. You have a really spectacular, fantastical scene that will be completely derailed by a stupid one-liner. And it's frustrating because you want to kind of immerse yourself in this fantasy world, but you're constantly kind of getting brought back to like, oh, this is silly again.
Yep.
With like some dumb joke. It is kind of frustrating because I did like the premise of we want to stop Ragnarok, the wolf swallowing the moon by blowing this horn and being transported to the edge of the world and Asgard, and all of the visuals in the sort of the second half of the movie I really loved. But all the silly gags when they arrive in Asgard and everyone's just marveling at the beauty of it. And then you've got the Catholic priest just saying, what are you looking at? And it's just like, oh, again, like stop with the jokes. Let me just appreciate the marvel of what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, I appreciated the fact while watching it that I was watching a film back in the day when everything was largely either done in camera or optically. There was no CGI vomit that I had to worry about.
Yeah.
I appreciated very much the production design. So it looked authentic, especially like the Viking village looked really good. And I thought Valhalla was a really great set piece. Yeah.
The big dragon that they have to fight.
It looked great too. Like I was like, wow. But like you said, Dan, it kept stepping on its own robe.
Yeah.
If you're trying to set up a comedy, but you're trying to play it straight, then the only person who succeeded in selling a comedy played straight in the movie is John Cleese. Everybody else was trying their best, except Terry Jones, because he can't stop doing his like Timu version of Anthony Daniels. But like everybody else, you've got like the father and son, where the dad is constantly trying to explain to his son how to be a berserker.
Yeah,
and he's always like trying to watch his son when he goes berserk. Is he going berserk at the right time and for the right reason and all this kind of stuff? And that could have been a funny Viking themed joke, but it never quite played. Like there was something that just never landed with it.
Yeah, like I thought that setup would have had a bigger impact. But when he does go berserk, I guess, he doesn't, I mean, he does, take down a bunch of men, but doesn't quite feel as impactful as it could have been. Like there was so much sort of setup for it, but he doesn't really do a lot.
Yeah, like one guy dies in a battle with John Cleese's dudes, the big burly, like blonde-haired dude. They meet up with him again in Valhalla or something like that, and then he just gets to leave with them and go back to real life. Yeah. And you're like, why was he allowed the golden ticket out? Like, what happened there? And then the other one that drives me nuts, Erik, it's established in the really tone-deaf attempted rape scene that's only saved by Samantha Bond's great performance and the fact that he's got like anxiety hangups. But he's established that he's not into violence. He wants to end violence. He hasn't practiced with a blade. He's not a berserker. He's not really a good Viking warrior of any kind. And then he puts on a piece of burlap over his head that actually isn't going to keep him invisible and goes up against all of John Cleese's skull-helmeted wearing Viking guys. And they know that they can see him. They don't know what he's up to. And he's just ripping through them in the worst fight scene I've ever seen. And you're going, there's no way he could take these guys on. I know that because they established he can't take anybody on. He should be dead within 3 seconds. And he's taking out a literal boatload of these guys. And I'm going, this isn't playing funny either, because you haven't established that verisimilitude, Terry, that would sell this situation.
Yeah. I think as well, the whole cloak of invisibility that he thinks he has, I think it goes for too long. So when he finally finds out, it kind of, it's lost its funny. Like, it's not, this is not funny anymore. We've just watched a 10-minute fight scene. Like, it doesn't quite work for the laugh.
Yeah.
That fight scene on that boat may be as long as Stuart Granger's sword fight in Scaramouche, which up until Revenge of the Sith came out, held the record for the longest cinematic sword fight in Western movie history.
Right.
And that sword fight's actually good to watch, even though it's from the 1950s. It keeps you engaged. I'm not sure if it's because the fight itself is actually engaging or because of his white and black vertical stripe pantaloons. Whereas this one, it goes on forever and there's no dynamism to it. Even the choreography's not hitting hard. It's just like the way it's edited, the way it's blocked. I just wanted to switch over to a movie I actually hated that I could really sink my teeth into.
And yet Terry Jones directed Monty Python's movies, certainly after Holy Grail, which he co-directed with Terry Gilliam, but they found that didn't work terribly well because they ended up at odds with each other or contradicting each other. And I think in the end, they split it so that Gilliam was doing the visual design and Terry was working with the actors. So then he directs Life of Brian, which is a masterpiece.
Yes, absolutely. Life of Brian's wonderful. But I have to wonder, Conrad, are those directorial efforts successful because at the writing and performance level, it was wholly collaborative with the rest of the Monty Python cast? In other words, that it wasn't just a Terry Jones joint, as Spike Lee would say. Like, I don't know. I'm speculating.
I think the answer lies in the success of everything that he does after that. So Gilliam does all of the Gilliam movies, and he does Personal Services, which is a sex comedy in 87, which he didn't write, Erik the Viking, which he did, an adaptation of The Wind in the Willows, and a film called Absolutely Anything, starring Simon Pegg, which I do remember watching, but I don't remember anything about it.
There's a trend here.
There is a trend. None of these were particularly successful or retrospectively well thought of movies. So I suspect there could be a strong argument for Terry Jones not being one of the most talented Pythons, which is not something that you want to come to lightly.
No, I'm not saying he's the Zeppo of the Monty Python troupe. When he's in the right sketches, in the right roles, even though they seem to be the one note, they knew where to slot him for maximum effectiveness.
Yeah.
And so in those sketches, and Life of Brian is one of my favorite comedies of all time, and he was the director. I'm not taking that away from him, but it was a Monty Python movie, which means there was a level of collaboration there that I think affects the outcome. And in this particular case, I agree with Dan that the concept of the plot had a lot of potential, but the way he executed on the script and his indecision about whether or not this is a comedy or a situationally straight series of hijinks, it didn't come off. It just didn't.
Yeah. I did find similarities to like Terry Pratchett, actually, because Terry Pratchett does have a silly comedy humor with his writing as well as it being a fantasy magical world. So I don't know, maybe it's just a type of comedy I'm not used to. Also, the sort of adventure of this movie felt like the Odyssey, a crew of men just coming across islands and weird things happening. So I did really like that sort of premise and going to Asgard. And my only exposure to Norse mythology is Thor and the Marvel universe.
Right.
So it was interesting seeing all of those elements sort of repackaged in Erik the Viking.
Right.
So you've got, Odin and the Fenrir the wolf and Asgard and Valhalla, and it's all Yeah, it was interesting seeing it not Thor related.
Yeah, and Bifrost and other things. All
Yeah.
of the mythology is there, but in a completely different interpretation. I mean, Terry Jones is known for being a historian. So, for example, he did a couple of series, Terry Jones' Medieval Lives, Terry Jones's Barbarians.
I read somewhere that he wanted to not include any horned helmets. So there's not that sort of stereotypical Viking helmet, because apparently that wasn't a thing.
Yeah, his whole documentary, The Crusades, back in the 90s, was wonderful. His historical documentary work is great, and I'm so glad you brought that up and reminded me of that, because I'm known around my friends for being a World War II guy, but I'm also a big early Middle Ages guy and Crusades guy.
Right.
Terry Jones' Crusades multi-part documentary is a documentary of note. Yeah, he's great in those areas of passion.
Yeah, so I think the historical accuracy, I think the production design, the detail of the village and all of the props and the costumes.
Like working Viking boat, like they look like actual constructed Viking longboats.
Yeah.
Oars and everything. Like it doesn't look like miniatures. It doesn't look like green screen. I mean, there are some green screen parts, but
Yeah.
yeah, you've got some actual boats with people rowing them.
Yeah, filming the longboats in a 10 million gallon tank in Malta, which had two of the largest tanks for filming in the world at the time. And what's really fun is they built them at the coast. So it's essentially like an infinity pool. So they've got a controlled tank with a wave machine, and they've got all the cast there, and they're doing the fog and everything. And there's an invisible line that you can't see, and beyond that is the ocean.
Oh, right.
So it looks like they're out at sea, but they're actually not. They can actually get off and just go to lunch at the end.
Oh, wow.
That
That's
is
amazing.
what a genius idea.
Yeah.
That really is brilliant, because the other day I sat down and watched the original miniseries for Shogun before I watched the new miniseries. I wanted to refamiliarize myself with the original. And in the beginning, there are ships and storms sequences in a tank. But the tank is like on, I guess it's like the Paramount lot or something. And this is like 1979 when they filmed it. So when the lightning effects go off, you can actually see the black scrim walls at the back of the tank. It's set at night.
Oh, no.
So they were trying to mask it. But I think they thought that because this was going to be on broadcast TV, that you would never see that. But now that they've scanned it right off the original 35 millimeter negative, suddenly you can see all that. So that tank design in Malta sounds genius. Masking it, like blending it with the real ocean.
It's a really clever idea. It's like the movie Triangle that we watched, where they just film a ship at the end of a pier and make sure that they move the ship around so that they get the angle out to the ocean that they need.
Yeah.
Ideal.
That's awesome.
It is.
Now it's time for random trivia.
Okay, trivia time. I don't have anything this time, but did any of you have some juicy trivia found in a Viking pillage village today?
Well, I discovered that Neil Baldwin, the founder of Eurocom, the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES game developer, revealed in 2009 that the company had developed a Zelda-style RPG based on Erik the Viking.
Wow.
That they nearly completed, but their relationship with the Japanese publisher broke down. So the latest version that they submitted was in good shape and fun to play, but he only has a showreel ROM of it.
Oh.
It is lost to time.
Wow.
There you go. Were you a NES player, Michael?
Oh yes, I was.
Yeah?
I was NES. I was not Mega Drive. I was NES all the way, and I played a lot of those Zelda type games that flew under the radars. I played Legend of Zelda, of course, but I also played the NES port of Willow, which was a very that's a very, very good Zelda type game. For anybody that likes those types of RPGs, that one is great too. If Erik the Viking had been anything like Legend of Zelda as a game, I bet you that game would have been better remembered as a great Nintendo game than a movie. I bet you the game would have superseded the film. That's too bad that didn't get developed.
Yeah, definitely. And that's our trivia.
Yes. We've talked about some of the cast. I didn't know who Samantha Bond was, but she was in all of the Bond movies in the 90s as Moneypenny.
Yeah.
Which is kind of appropriate name.
She was Brosnan's Moneypenny.
She is great, and she makes a really great impression as Helga, who haunts Erik throughout the whole movie and spurs him on.
It's quite eerie when she keeps showing up, her sort of like pale, dead, bloody body in the background. Those scenes were quite haunting, but I don't really understand his motivation. Like, he's so determined to save her, but like, she didn't like him at all. I mean, I guess it's played for laughs, but it's just kind of like, what? Like, this is the crux of the entire movie.
And why would she like him? I mean, the only time she knew him was for 3 minutes when he was part of a group of Vikings destroying her village, murdering everybody there, and he was trying to summon up the courage to violate her.
Yeah.
And you're like, this guy is broken in every way. He's going on a quest to try and endear himself to a person who he was indirectly responsible for their death.
Yeah.
And he thinks that he's in love with her.
It's bizarre. It is quite strange.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate version of the action movie trope of the only other woman in the cast must be the love interest. They must fall in love.
Yeah.
Right.
But she's not interested in him at all.
I feel sorry for Imogen Stubbs' character because she's infatuated, like unjustifiably infatuated by him at
no
first
good
sight.
reason.
Yeah. And he's just like throwing her off as if she's, just another woman.
Yeah, I was sitting there the whole time when he was saying that horrible thing to her about I'm here for someone else or whatever. I'm like, dude, this is not just the best you'll ever do. This is far better than you ever deserved.
Yeah.
Like, you don't deserve anybody like her, and you're playing some Fugazi in your mind about I'm going to go look for this other person, like who by the way hates you, and everybody with a brain would know that except you, because they've written the dumbest main character. The guys in Dumb and Dumber are smarter than this guy, objectively.
And then you've got his merry band of men. You've got a great cast of people. You've got Tim McInerney as Sven the Berserk, the guy who's constantly trying to become a berserker without his dad overshadowing him all the time.
Yeah.
He's most famous for Blackadder, of course.
I know him from Notting Hill.
Of course.
of all movies.
You've got Freddie Jones, as I mentioned. Anthony Sher, Shakespearean actor. He'd just been a big hit in a production of Richard III at the time. And there he is just playing this weaselly villain in the background of this movie.
Yes.
And Eartha Kitt as magical black woman.
Yes, of course.
Is regrettable, but I mean, she kicks it out of the park,
She does.
so
She does,
fine.
yeah.
And you've also got Sutomu Sakine. I've probably completely fouled that up, but apparently a famous Japanese TV celebrity as a slave master in a baffling sequence
It is.
that attempts to make Asian stereotypes, racist stereotypes, funny by reversing them and projecting them towards white people. But I'm not sure that helps.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it doesn't really age. I mean, it's not as bad as it could have been.
No.
Because the joke is that no one understands Japanese, and they say, like, I would be more offended if I understood what he was saying. But I mean, yeah, it could have been worse, but it doesn't really age that well.
I just have to point out that in some home video releases and various remasters and edits of this film, they forgot to put those subtitles back in.
Oh,
I found his inclusion so random.
it is strange. Yeah.
I didn't understand where that came from.
There were a few things that happened as a result of investors. Believe it or not, this cost $15 million, this movie. And they had to shop around the whole world to get $1 million from this company and $1 million from that company. And so the Japanese investors insisted that this guy appear
Interesting.
for a sequence.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
then I almost want to salute the movie for being like, all right, we'll definitely concede to that stipulation because you're investing in the movie. And we'll make this guy in command of the rowers.
Yeah.
And we will just make him verbally light into all of them. All right. I can kind of get behind that, honestly.
Yeah. The other one that's quite intriguing is originally Halfdan was going to be played by Jack Lemmon.
Right. Okay.
And he pulled out at the last minute, and John Cleese was the preferred replacement by the German investors, and John did it as a favor.
Really?
To Terry Jones.
It feels like a favor, but I say that in the best way possible. It feels like he doesn't want to be there and he's doing a totally different movie, but it's almost like John Cleese knew what tone the movie actually needed. I thought his performance was the standout performance, small as it was, in the whole film. He's actually making me chuckle when he's talking. Like, he's making me laugh.
It's the delivery. Yeah.
It's interesting because Terry Jones directed him on that. John Cleese was originally playing it, again, straight. So he is playing it as villain,
Right.
nasty, evil man. It was Terry Jones's direction to John that he should play it as a bored merchant banker who's just, he doesn't really want to be beheading all of these people, but, you've got to keep up with the paperwork.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out that we're all finally laughing talking about these scenes.
Oh, yeah. I think it, without doubt, whenever Cleese is on the screen, it livens up. But that brings me to a question. Is this meant to be a comedy?
Sure.
Because
Right.
it's based on Terry's children's book of 28 stories about Erik the Viking, which he wrote for his son Bill, who several decades later would end up re-editing the movie into a showreel. So fun adventures for kids.
Right.
So is it supposed to be a comedy, or is it yet another one that got dragged into a false comparison with Monty Python works, just like Jabberwocky suffered as a result of people saying, hey, it's a Monty Python movie, when they desperately didn't want it to be marketed as such?
If they didn't, then Terry Jones made two fatal mistakes. One, he cast himself as the type of character he always played in a Monty Python sketch and performed against his own directions to the other cast members.
Yes.
And two, he directed John Cleese's role as John Cleese would often come off in a Monty Python sketch, rather than John Cleese tried to, as you said, use the notes and play it with verisimilitude, and he fell into Monty Python wagon ruts in the road, directing both himself and John Cleese in the Monty Python bend.
Yeah, it's true.
That in and of itself creates conceptual schizophrenia.
Yeah, I mean, and at the end of the movie, it does say this film is not based on the children's book, The Saga of Erik the Viking by Terry Jones, although he hopes it will help the sales. And I did hear it's not based on it, really. It's a completely different story. But it is obviously a comedy, though.
Right.
There are like gags every 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And they're not good gags.
No.
But they're definitely gags. It's not serious for a moment.
No, it's like a non-professional attempting to be funny. It's like your uncle who's had a few too many drinks at a family gathering trying to be funny and labouring it too long.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things about it that maybe are noteworthy, like the whole trying not to be misogynistic. I don't think it is for the most part, although, yes, the female characters aren't great. They're either raped or killed, or the wafy, like, love interest that doesn't seem to be interested in anything else but love. But you have got the character, I think his name is Thorfinn, the skull splitter. He becomes really fearful at one point, and it's kind of an interesting take on Vikings being afraid. Like, you just don't really expect that. And then I guess, like, Catholicism saves everyone, because you've got the priest that can walk through walls because he doesn't believe in Asgard, and saves everyone. So does Christianity win at the end of the day? I don't know. I don't know what the themes were. So there were like core values in the movie that weren't really fleshed out.
Yeah, thematically, there are a few things going on for comedy, but also for commentary. There's an analysis of the alpha male fallacy around Vikings.
Yeah.
You've got a criticism of capitalism, because capitalism is the only thing that's trying to keep the war and bloodshed going on. And Terry made the connection between climate denial and the sinking island, although that's a very modern comment that I don't think would have been on their minds when he made the movie. I think he said it was more a criticism of blind faith.
Right. Okay.
That they would just stand there saying, nothing's happening, as they sink. But to me, it just gave me the sense of sort of detached, privileged people who just can't believe that anything bad would ever happen to them.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
That was the sense that I got from it, rather than anything more relevant today like climate denial, although it is ironic as he slips beneath the rising tide, pretending it's not happening.
Yeah. I mean, it was triggered by the bloodshed, not pollution.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
And that's the theme that I took away from it too, which was what Dan was referring to, which is in a broader sense, the whole idea that humans will pave paradise. You know, they'll destroy paradise for our human inclinations like violence or greed or something like that. And so a beautiful place is lost. But I do find it interesting that he made those statements retroactively.
Yeah.
yeah.
There's stuff in there. There's clearly an attempt to do something interesting, spiced up with a bit of funny, but I don't think it's trying to be Python. Of course, it suffered by comparison. It was completely caned when it came out by the critics.
Yeah.
And it did not do terribly well. So on a 15 million budget, when it was released on the 22nd of September in the US and the 29th in the UK, 1989, it yielded 1.9 million
Wow.
in the US box office.
Wow.
This is at a time when the top 5 was Black Rain, crime drama, Sea of Love, crime drama, Uncle Buck, John Hughes, comedy, Parenthood, family comedy, directed by Ron Howard, and When Harry Met Sally, a rom-com. Yeah, Eric placed 16th in the chart and vanished a week later. Yeah. That's rough.
Rough and yet deserved.
I did like the score, though. I think the score kind of works.
Right.
It's memorable, it's thematic, and it's for orchestra, it sounds.
In places, yeah. Sometimes it uses that trick of having a chamber orchestra doubled up by MIDI instruments, and I can kind of hear it.
Oh, really? Yeah,
was
okay.
popular around that time.
But I think thematically it works. There's a lot of like recurring themes that are singable.
It's very British as well, very woodwindy.
Yes, there's a lot of woodwind. Yeah. I mean, I don't really know the composer, so Neil Innes.
So he's often thought of as the seventh Python because
right, yes.
he did a lot of musical collaborations with them and with Eric Idle. I think he did try to do a score for Holy Grail, but it was thrown out because it didn't sound grand enough. So they ended up using the DeWolf music library that they used for Jabberwocky as well. So it was overly grand and ridiculous.
Right.
Okay. And Neil also makes a cameo as one of the High Brazilians, I think.
Yeah, he does.
I don't know which one.
I can always spot him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think he was in Jabberwocky as the guy that was playing the drum.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. The score's okay.
I liked it.
I liked it.
Coming to you live from the Movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mobley Awards.
Hello, it's that special time of the pod, the Mobley Awards, where we nominate our favourite Viking skull-splitting parts of the film in a number of High Brazil, it's indubitably not sinking categories.
Best quote.
My favourite quote comes from the scene where the Vikings are really keen to hack up Princess Aud when they first meet her, and Eric convinces them that they could try something
Yes.
different instead, like becoming friends, and Sven the Berserk says, "We can make friends at home."
I like the precursor to that. One of them says, "We don't go through all the hardships of an ocean voyage to make friends."
Yeah, they've really got the wrong idea of tourism, I think.
Yeah, I think it's one of the few lines where the comedy works. It does work in that scene.
Yeah. How about you, Michael?
I think my favorite line in the film comes from my family's background. My mom is Protestant, my dad is Catholic. I went to Catholic school. So Harold the missionary is a highlight, as we've established in the film. And I love the line where he says, "Listen, I've been in this dump for 16 years and I haven't made a single convert." And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I went to Catholic school for a total of 9 years and it didn't convince me to finally sign on the dotted line.
Yeah.
So I really feel his pain on that one.
Right, yeah.
Best hair or costume.
I did like the blacksmith's sort of fur layers because he did He almost looked like he just stepped off the catalogue of a fashion magazine or something. Like he's very Scandinavian with his kind of long blonde locks. Yeah, he looked pretty good.
Yeah, I thought he had the best hair by far. Luscious blonde hair, seemingly straightened with ceramic tongs, and these lovely wavy fronds that frame his face, like Ulysses 31 from the anime series. Yeah, I thought he was a pretty impressive specimen.
Yes.
And clearly the ladies of the village were very sorry to see him
Yeah.
Most 80s moment.
I thought the most 80s thing about this movie was swords.
Yeah.
I don't know why we were so addicted to swords in the 80s, but
Yeah.
we really were. Not only in historical adventures like Terry Gilliam's Time Bandits and Baron Munchausen, things like The Princess Bride, we were also just shoehorning it into sci-fi like Masters of the Universe and time travel romances like Highlander. So just swords everywhere. I don't know what we were compensating for in the 80s, but we were big time.
Yeah.
My most 80s moment in this film has to be the big dragon monster thing, because much like you just said, Conrad, about the swords, the other thing that comes with 80s movies that have a lot of guys with swords is a big in-camera puppet monster. And that one literally dominated the screen. It reminded me of the end of Conan the Destroyer in many ways. I thought, man, this is an in-camera 80s fantasy moment. I wish the rest of the movie reflected that. But hey, I appreciate the effort here. And yeah, that was the most 80s thing for me in the film, was the big in-camera physical monster beast thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, always fun.
Favorite scene?
My best shot at picking a favourite scene, I find it very hard, was possibly the scene where Princess Old is trying to hide Erik in her bedroom the morning after from her dad. And she's got this invisibility cloak that she's put over him, but it's only like a tea towel. So you just have the vision of a naked 6'5" Tim Robbins holding his junk with a tea towel on his head, while Terry Jones wanders around pretending to be Miss Piggy, trying not to see him. Where is it? Anyway, I thought, okay, this is the one pointless joke that's actually okay playing long because it's mainly visual, and Tim Robbins is having fun with it.
Yeah. My favorite scene, I did like the journey to Asgard sequence, actually. So blowing the horn, the sound of the horn, I'll get into it in favorite sound, but reaching the edge of the world. So you've got the waterfall and the boat just kind of teetering on the edge, and then they finally let go and it lands in Valhalla. You've got the rainbow bridge, the aurora lights in the background, and then Asgard appeared. So that whole sequence is magical. And I love it. It works for me.
Yeah.
There's also no comedy in that scene, so maybe that's why it works.
It's actually genuinely going for a sense of wonder,
yeah.
which is quite nice.
I'm going to be cliche. My favorite scene, just from a concept level, is the scene toward the beginning where John Cleese is just rattling off all those different torture sentences to all those criminals and people who aren't criminals, where he's just, like you said, bureaucratically trying to get through his day as fast as he can. He hates his position. He hates his job. He hates having to deal with all of it. And you have all those different reactions from all those people. Does it get repetitive? Yes, it does. Does it play a little too long? Like every other scene in this movie. Yes, it does. But conceptually, I did laugh on the first, 3 to 5 jokes. I thought it worked really well because of John Cleese, and that's probably the most memorable scene in the film for me. So
Yeah.
Most cliche moment.
I was going to say magical music. So the horn resounding has the ability to create interdimensional travel. Very much like the cosmic key in Masters of the Universe, which I also mentioned when I was talking about swords. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, I think characters end up fighting each other with music in that
they
one.
do.
And in the Pixar movie Coco, music enables the main character to cross over to the land of the dead. So music as a magical method of travel is my cliche.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's an interesting way of progressing plot as well. In this movie, they had to blow it 3 times. So once to get to Asgard, once to wake the gods, and then once to get home. So 3 times. So I don't know. I like that sort of mythology of it.
Yeah. Other cliches?
The biggest cliche for me in this movie is the ineffectual hero just having a romantic relationship with the main ingenue in the film for no apparent reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
If you have no worries or cares and you're living on an island with far more attractive and tolerable individuals, what is the appeal of a dude who brought weapons and everything else onto your island with a bunch of smelly ruffians and you're like, ooh, I want to get me a piece of that? I don't think so. I just don't think so.
Yeah.
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 Best special effect.
I actually thought the practical sinking of High Brazil was a really clever special effect.
Yeah. Like, how did they do that? Is that full size? Like, is it miniatures? What's going on?
It's full size, yeah. So it's in the Malta tank, and they just built the set inside the tank and then slowly filled the tank up.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It works really well.
And it works because it's real.
Yeah, because it's full buildings.
Yeah, it's like, hey guys, you know what the most effective way to do this would be? Let's just fill it with real water. Huh?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. And Malta is not a bad place to film your sort of sunny paradise either. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it looks incredible. And even the last scene where they're all perched on a rock and that just sinks down and you slowly see everyone's hair still floating in the water as well, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Terry Jones suddenly realized, because he's the last one to go under and he's talking while he goes under, and he suddenly realized that meant that he couldn't take a breath. So he almost ruined the shot because he had to come up immediately and gasp for air.
Of course.
But so they just did a separate shot in the same spot with loads of bubbles coming up and just immediately jump cut to that, and you don't notice that they've
wow.
They've jump
notice
cut.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
wow.
very clever.
If I don't count the sea monster or the dragon, whatever it is, as a best special effect, I guess it would be their approach to Valhalla. Because I do like the opticals that they use to make Valhalla feel like this ethereal, off the edge of the world kind of place, you know, just adjacent in the universe, this heavenly place. I like the practical effects of it. I like knowing that it's all on the negative. I think it worked really well. It certainly set a mood, and it's not subtle, but at the same time, it's not what people would think of as special effects, you know, like it, but it is a special effect.
Yeah. No,
I liked it.
It worked really well.
Favorite sound effect.
The obvious sound is the horn, right? I mean, it's the horn. It's not what I expected, because when he first blows it, it's quite eerie, it's quite breathy, and very quiet and quite pure sounding, and then it sort of crescendos and transitions into the score, which is quite interesting. So it has more of a sort of a sonic transition to a big orchestral brassy horn sound, which is not what I expected, and it really worked.
Yeah, I really liked it, and it sold the idea of something simple and magical that would then build into something that could crack open dimensions. I liked it.
Most funniest moment.
I'm not going to be surprised if everybody picks something of John Cleese, but for me, it was the scene when Erik is jumping around with a tea towel on his head, thinking that he's invisible, in front of Halfdan, and he lifts it up and says, "Now you see me, now you don't," and so on, and sort of taunts him, and he runs away, which of course we know is not working. And John Cleese waits the perfect amount of time, his comic timing is perfection, and then looks up at one of his henchmen and just goes, "What?" And with one syllable, John Cleese delivers the funniest line in this entire movie.
Yep.
It's not even like anger or real consternation, just sort of tired bewilderment. Like, what?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's perfect.
it's the delivery. It's John Cleese's delivery in every scene. It really works. I mean, yeah, Michael, you've already mentioned it, but the first scene, just the delivery alone. So he says, "I really can't give you a third chance. I'm so sorry. Would you behead him, please?" And it's just so off the cuff and just sort of throwaway. It's amazing, and it. Because you have so much build up to this scene to see the big bad villain. You've got people getting flayed outside, you've got screaming, you've got body parts hanging, and then you're presented John Cleese. It's it's amazing.
Yeah. It's great. It really is good. And that's our Mooblies.
Yeah.
This is Kelly Maroney, and you are listening to Movie Oubliette.
Okay, it's time for our final verdicts. Should Erik the Viking from 1989 be liberated into the world to plunder into the minds of movie lovers a praiseworthy film in Valhalla, or should it be stabbed in the back by Loki and sink with Hy Brasil into the murky depths of the Oubliette, never to be seen again? All right, gents. Erik the Viking. I have low hopes for its outcome, but here we go.
We have firmly established that this film has the inability to be remembered by people who have seen it. Therefore, even if we bring it out of the oubliette and say it shouldn't be forgotten, it will still be forgotten by default because that is its magic. Therefore, I think we should just leave it in the ether where it deserves to be because it's just going to be forgotten again anyway.
Yeah.
No matter how many times you edit it. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's rubbish. I'm sorry. It doesn't even deserve a final verdict. It's rubbish.
Right. Well, I might surprise you too, because I think it's not bad. I think it's not a perfect film. I think it's flawed. I hated the comedy. I wanted all of that just taken out of the movie. But I did like the premise. I think I liked the premise and the story and the mythology around it more than the movie itself, maybe. I loved the fantasy elements. Like, fantasy adventures is my jam. Like, I love that genre of movie. And yeah, I don't know. I think it might get better with repeat watches, and I might be alone here, but I would recommend this movie. And I have to say, I enjoyed it more than Jabberwocky. This might be a hot take.
Wow.
But we should check it with our patrons.
We should, yes. So, hello, Hal.
Yes, Conrad.
What have you been up to?
I've been busy generating fake news for the next big election.
Oh, that's helpful. Well, could you count our votes, please?
You'll never guess. They want to set it free.
Oh, really? I thought I was alone here.
No, you're not alone, Dan. The patrons agree with you. Eddie Coulter says, I say let them sail to Valhalla. I'm a fan of these Python-adjacent films, especially Erik the Viking, and it's a shame it's not more well-known as it does some interesting twists on Norse mythology. And Chazilla says, somebody call Graham Hancock and let him know he was right. And we found out what happened to Hy Brasil.
That is a reference to his books theorizing that there is an antediluvian continent that disappeared in prehistory.
Ah, there you go.
As an Indiana Jones guy, I have read and own a lot of the literature of Graham Hancock. It is some fascinating, if sometimes questionable stuff. When I say questionable, I mean like you might not get behind some of his theories, but he's not out to hurt anybody. He's just trying to think about human history in certain ways. He had a fascinating book on the Ark of the Covenant based on his own research.
Wow.
I'll shut up now, but his book Fingerprints of the Gods is a really interesting read.
Yeah,
So,
wow.
Ah, fascinating. Well, good reference, Chazilla. So, 75% to 25. They want to set
Ooh.
it free.
Okay.
So that means that we're tied.
We have to do a coin of fate.
The coin of fate.
So, Dan, you're championing this movie. Is it heads or tails?
I don't know. Should we let Michael choose?
Right, heads.
It's tails.
Oh, wow. So setting it free.
It won't matter. I'm not hurt by this in the least. The only thing you've done by setting it free is you have kicked it out of its last home. It no longer has a home, and that was the Oubliette. At least there, it was safe and it had 3 meals a day. Now it has to forage for itself. And it's going to die out in the wilderness. It's going to die.
Okay, well, good luck, Eric. Off you go.
Bye.
Goodbye. So, Michael, thanks so much for picking Erik the Viking for us to discuss today. Where can people follow you and find out more of your filmic tastes?
I just want to apologize. I don't often do sadistic things to my friends, and I didn't intend this time. I appreciate you all enduring that. It was such a mistake. You can find me at Retroblasting on YouTube, all one word, Retroblasting on Instagram, Retroblasting on Twitter, and Retroblasting on Facebook. And we analyze and confront the pop culture of our Generation X experience. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I love being here.
Thanks for joining us again. It's been a blast.
Yes. And you can follow Movie Oubliette on all platforms as Movie Oubliette and email us at movie.oubliette@gmail.com.
And if you want to help us keep the lights on, then head on over to Patreon, where for as little as $1, you can nominate films to appear in future episodes and get extended portions of the show. And for $5, you get access to our exclusive monthly minisodes, and you get to vote on the final verdict. And for $10, you can be an executive producer, proudly named at the end of every episode, like Shazilla, Eddie Coulter, Isaac Sutton, Dr. Doggy, Serge, Iconographer, and Ryan A. Potter.
Thanks for the support. We have merchandise at Redbubble and a YouTube channel. And if you haven't rated and reviewed us yet, do that on all platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It does help us get the word out.
It does indeed.
And I guess now we should review what's up next. Conrad, what's on the plate?
Well, next time we'll be taking a retrospective look at the first film of a very famous director that celebrates its 30th anniversary this year. It's the British black comedy thriller Shallow Grave.
Ah, yes. Danny Boyle. Yeah, I love Danny Boyle.
And it's Ewan McGregor.
Yes. It is.
I think you do a great impression of Ewan McGregor, don't you, Michael?
Well, yes, I do an impression of Ewan McGregor doing an impression of Alec Guinness. Yes, from Attack of the Clones, the infamous hologram line. It's only infamous to me. Everybody else is like, I don't recall that line being infamous. But when you hear it over and over again, it's pretty funny, where he says in the reign of Camino, in the hologram back to Yoda, they're using a bounty hunter named Jango Fett to create a clone army. I'm going to go sit in one of these Chinese soup spoons now and talk to this alien. Goodbye. And then he walks away.
I thought he was in the room.
It's so clipped and very strange, but he does sound like that when you watch it. They're using a bounty hunter named Jango Fett.
Yeah, it was an interesting performance on the whole. This one will be a very, very young Ewan McGregor alongside Christopher Eccleston and Kerry Fox in a film written by John Hodge.
I love Christopher Eccleston.
Great. And that's it for another episode. Thanks again, Michael, for joining us and, putting us through Erik the Viking. And until next time. I mean, I enjoyed it.
They're not my friends anymore, and I don't blame them.
Okay, bye for now, everyone.
Goodbye.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie Oubliette.
Stay calm. This is not happening.